pew. Pew pew. Hi and welcome back to the inside of my head, where I'm literally just back from the theatre after having seen Jurassic World Dominion. So what you're going to get in this video are my fresh, straight off the bat feelings. I'm going to try and avoid spoilers as best I can, but like I said, this video is going to be a kind of a stream of thought video rather than anything structured, so there might be the odd softcore spoiler here and there. Make sure you get a like on the video and please consider subscribing if you like monster stuff mixed in with mecha stuff and general sci-fi randomness. If my voice sounds weird, by the way, it's because I was at Disneyland at the weekend and I cannot help but scream every time I go on a roller coaster. I am a screamer. And the thing is, it's really embarrassing. It's just like a compulsion. I mean, I'm sure you can imagine how many pissed off stares parents give you when you're screaming "F a f***ing key" on the Mad Hatter's teacup rides. Anyway, on to Dominion. Overall, it's kind of what I was expecting. I am a touch disappointed that they couldn't do more with it than this, but I guess it was fine without ever blowing my mind. But I did prefer this to Fallen Kingdom, but it wasn't as good as Jurassic World for me. So let's talk about the plot in very broad strokes, of course. It, of course, starts after the events of Fallen Kingdom, where dinosaurs have now been released onto the mainland, and humanity is struggling to get a handle on controlling these beasts. They've taken certain measures, like set up a sanctuary in the Dolomite Mountains in Italy, which is where the snowy scenes that we've seen in the trailer take place. And we do see a few scenes of the dinosaurs causing havoc in what we consider to be our world. Like, there's an awesome visual of the Mosasaurus in a scene with a fishing boat, let's just say. That was an epic way to kick off the movie, but there aren't as many dinosaurs running amok scenes and messing with our civilization as I would have liked or expected. But you guys know me, you've seen my channel, you know that I love the Godzilla shit and all that stuff where the monsters run amok and destroy our cities, and I guess that's just not the flavor of the day here. And I guess we did have a good dose of that in Jurassic Park too, so there's not actually a lot of time spent on that stuff here. The question that I had about how the dinosaurs spread so far and so wide so quickly is answered in a relatively plausible way, the principal reason being black market dealers and traffickers smuggling them across borders to sell them overseas, and shady organizations setting up illegal, dino breeding farms. And that's where we pick up with Claire, who is finding and reporting as many of these as she can, and helping to free only the cutest baby Triceratops along the way. She's living with Owen now in a cabin in the woods somewhere, and they're raising Maisie as their own daughter. If you remember, she's the first human clone, so is wanted by corporations, government, CIA, you name it. So they're trying to keep her safe in hiding in the middle of the woods. She's the stereotypical teenage girl who doesn't want her wings clipped, and she's kind of annoying in all the cliched ways, for the most part. But you know, you do understand where she's coming from. Owen is a full-on dino cowboy now, riding a horse around, lassoing random parasaurial officers. Now, on the flip side of this cowboy vibe, there are also dino rustlers who discover Maisie and Blue's baby, and realizing who Maisie is, they kidnap them both, and their story kicks off there. The other story thread picks up with Alan Grant, and I can't remember her character's name, but Laura Dern, teaming up to look into why these giant colossal locusts are stripping our crops, something that will eventually totally screw up the food chain and lead to mass starvations. It's revealed pretty early on that Biosyn has done this on purpose to try and get control of the world's food supply, and Grant and Laura Dern's character, whose name I will look up at some point, I promise, and Malcolm go on a quest to infiltrate Biosyn to get proof and find a way to reverse the process, and that story kicks off from there. So again, that's the broad view of the plot, which we all pretty much knew from the pre-release material. But because we knew all of this already, it almost renders the first half of the movie kind of redundant. Biosyn's sanctuary and new facility in the Dolomites essentially becomes the new park, and the whole thing ends up reverting to the same formula that we've known all along. The Atrociraptors are kind of the mini-bosses, just like the Velociraptors always have been, and then there's the big bad for the climax, and a couple of dinos team up to take it down. The ones that do team up, though, are not the ones that I was expecting, and that was a very pleasant surprise, even though the final battle is a little bit of a letdown in itself when compared to Rexy and Blue versus Indominus Rex, for example. Damn, my voice is fucked. But there are a fair few things that bugged me in this movie too. One big thing was that, oh, we have Sam Neill and Laura Dern in it now? Great. But now you have, 7 main characters with Goldblum, Neill, Dern, then Bryce Dallas Howard, Chris Pratt, and then this young girl, Maisie. Then they bring in this new character who it feels like they're trying their damnedest to make one of the main cast, but never really works, never really fits. So it was clear that some were going to be pushed to the background and get less limelight. And I'm fine with that as long as it's not Sam Neill. And yes, of course, that's exactly what ends up happening. Probably my favorite character is the one who ends up being a touch redundant. And I guess on paper, he is the least interesting character. He's definitely the least colorful character. But sometimes that's what you need. Just like a solid guy, who knows his stuff. That's all you need. But sometimes I caught myself wondering, like, what was he doing there in the first place? What was it done? Needed a witness, apparently? But it feels like they could have made so much more of this guy's skill set in the context of all the shit that was going down around them. Like, the only meaningful thing I remember him doing was copying Chris Pratt's hand signal moves to try and capture Baby Blue. So, yeah, a little bit disappointed with how he was used, for sure. Jeff Goldblum was, Jeff Goldblum, no more, no less, except he was fucking pointing his finger all the way through. Like, no, it's true, in almost every scene, he's pointing his finger at somebody, like, in this really annoying way, and once you notice it, you can't see anything else. Like, didn't your parents teach you it's rude to point at people? Like, literally everything he says, he's pointing his finger gun. Pew, 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 pew. Oh man, I can't even do the pew pew noise. Pew. Pew pew. The human villain of the piece was your usual big tech entrepreneur in the mold of Zuckerberg, that kind of character cliche. But in this case, it was definitely supposed to be Steve Jobs, or, what's his name? Steve Jobs too. But as well as being the bad guy behind all of this, he was also kind of just like laughable in a really odd way. I think their intention was to make it, quirky, but the whole character came off like random and a bit weird. So onto the dinosaurs. The biggest thing is, and this isn't really a spoiler, but if you were expecting to see Blue team up with another dinosaur or appear just in time to save the day, or as in my case, wanted to see Blue fight Ghost the Atrociraptor, no, because Blue is hardly in this movie. It's not that she dies or anything, it's just that most of the action takes place on another continent, I guess, and I suppose they couldn't figure out how to get her on the plane. So it does make sense. I don't think it would be realistic to have her involved in events happening so far away, but she just feels a little left out, a little sidelined. The one last thing I wanted to talk about when it comes to things that bugged me was that there's this plane crash scene where there's 3 characters in a plane and they only have 1 parachute. And remember that scene in World War Z where Brad Pitt is in a plane crash and every single other passenger is either killed or horribly wounded, but he magically survived somehow? Well, something very similar happens here. Not quite to the same extent, but still, the whole situation is caked in plot armor. In fact, on reflection, it might be a little bit worse, and this might be construed as a spoiler, so maybe skip ahead by 30 seconds or something, I don't know. But basically, the plane crashes into a frozen lake, and you don't see the crash itself, you see the plane coming in real fast, and then it cuts away to another scene, and then when it comes back, the plane is embedded in the ice. It didn't smash into thousands of pieces, it didn't go up in a huge fireball, it didn't sink into the freezing water underneath, it just crashed in a way that seemed overly convenient so the occupants could just step out. But yeah, those are the main things that bugged me, the things that spring to my mind right now anyway. But I want to finish by talking about the positives, like I usually do in my videos. And there were a fair few. And the main one is the Therizinosaurus. I won't say too much, but that did surpass my expectations in a lot of ways. It was way bigger than I thought it was going to be, and it was pretty damn fearsome. The Atrociraptors were cool, but not really any cooler than what we've seen before, apart from them leaping between buildings. That was pretty neat. I was wondering how they would explain how they get them to follow a laser dot that's been pointed at a guy for maybe 5 seconds, but there is a half-decent reason in there for that. Basically, from what I remember, they've basically put a chip in all of this generation of dinos' brains, so they can herd them in case of emergencies or keep them from flying too high to interfere with planes' flight paths, etc. And I think this is how they can control the Atrociraptors in that way. So to conclude, I would say that my main feeling is that this movie was okay, but as a round off to this whole era of movies, it was a bit of a letdown. I was hoping for much more. And in part, this is because the best moments, the Atrociraptor scene, the Pyroraptor scene, were all put out there before release. But the stuff that wasn't, case in point the stuff with the Giganotosaurus, could have been made more of. They could have gone way further with that guy. And some other moments that I really, really liked, ones that I'm not going to talk about here, weren't quite enough to make up for it. Anyway, if you've seen it, I'm dying to know what you thought, so please do get in the comments. I have a top Jurassic kills lined up for later in the week, as well as a certain face-off video featuring a couple of Jurassic dinosaurs that I've had to rewrite like 5 times because it's just so hard to call. So make sure you're subscribed for that, and I will see you very soon for the next one. Thank you very much for watching, and cheerio, bye!